What's up, everybody? Welcome into Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse. Jesse, of course, in the middle of flying from Minnesota to Edmonton, the back-to-back. The NHL scheduling department really hates Jesse right now. So I've got my friend Aarif Deen here to step in and chat some Avs hockey with us today. What's happening, Aarif?
I'm doing well. I'll play Jesse for the day. That's great.
Yeah, thanks for coming down to the Guerilla Sports Studio again. Did you get your windshield cleaned while you were on your way down here?
Santa Fe is a great place. Denver Hustlers. You got to love it.
Yeah, I got mine done. I think it's a complimentary service that maybe Denver might be paying for right now. I don't know, but somebody came, walked up, and I was like, I don't have any money for you. He's like, no worries, and just cleaned it anyway.
I feel bad because I don't carry cash anymore.
Who does?
That's not a thing. And that's not like a COVID thing. That's just like been an always thing. My wallet has very little space for anything. And I never carry cash, so I always feel bad when those guys come. I'm like, I can't let this guy clean my window without giving him a $5.
And how insulting would it be to just hand him like a handful of pennies and dimes that you have?
I have these quarters that have been sitting in my glove compartment since 4 cars ago. You want them? Like, it's Denver.
Yeah. Good stuff. So I want to start with looking at the Frozen Four real quick. I've always said, and I know you've heard me say this, that DU is such an undervalued program here in this city. So let's give them a little bit of time to acknowledge, hey, they're in the Frozen Four again, always competing. But I thought what was interesting about this year's Frozen Four and the NCAA are the teams that are remaining. Right now you've got DU, Michigan, Boston College, and the University of Boston, or BU.
Yeah.
And to me, those are 4 of the juggernauts of college hockey. So I think it's just interesting to see all 4 of them just saying, hey, Quinnipiac, good job last year. That was cute. We're bringing the dominant programs back into the picture. Yeah,
this would be the equivalent of like back in the day, Colorado versus Detroit on one side, or if you like just take the 4 like biggest markets like the LAs and the Rangers and Toronto, like just put them all in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference final. So it's pretty cool. Michigan, I'm a little surprised made it because, and I say that obviously as a big Michigan fan, because they were 500 in the Big Ten this year. They were 11-11 and I want to say 4. And 8 days before they beat Michigan State to make it to the Frozen Four, and they beat them 5-2 with 3 goals in the third period of a 2-2 tie. 8 days before that, Michigan State beat Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. And then 8 days later, Michigan turned around and beat them to go to the Frozen Four. So Michigan State's at home with the Big Ten championship. Michigan's going to the Frozen Four.
They just won the important games.
They won the more important game. So, Big Ten championship's a great thing, but I'm sure the State would rather be here right now. But State, I forget the kid's name that's going to go top 3 place for State this year. But BU and BC, obviously, they have an opportunity to meet in the final because each one is playing DU and Michigan, and they're going to have something to say about that. Cutter Gauthier involved in this. Macklin Celebrini was going to go number 1 overall. I don't know if you watched any of those games, but if you do get a chance to watch some Frozen Four games, Cutter Gauthier a good player. The guy that talked his way out of Philadelphia several months ago, and there were rumors that the Avalanche looked at Bowen Byram for Cutter Gauthier, and the Flyers asked for Bowen Byram for Cutter Gauthier, but the Avalanche said this isn't going to be a 1-for-1 deal. So that says to me the Avalanche, Cutter Gauthier's a future center. He's a future probably number 1 center in Anaheim, potentially number 2. Granted, it's exactly what the Avalanche need. And he would be ready to step into the NHL by the end of the Frozen Four this year, if not next season. And I think the Avalanche probably looked at that and said, as much as getting Cutter Gauthier might end up being better than someone like a Casey Middlestat, granted that trade happened in January, it's one of those things where they probably said, at least give us like a Morgan Frost, a Scott Laughton, like some kind of a holdover until this kid's ready, because we would love Cutter Gauthier playing, second fiddle to McKinnon for the next half a decade and more. But we also are looking to win the Cup in 2024. So,
right, this year to think about.
Watching Cutter Gauthier, my brain started spinning. What were those conversations like with Chris McFarland and Danny Briere? Like, what was kind of the idea behind that trade? Because I think if Philly got Bowen Byram instead of Jamie Drysdale and a second-round draft pick, they would have done better. But the Middlestat Cutter Gauthier thing, I'm going to be thinking about that for years. Maybe I'm the only one, but watching this kid really reminded me of that, and you just reminded me of that talking about the Frozen Four.
No, that's definitely an interesting thing to keep an eye on over the next couple years. But like you said, the Avalanche have to win now. Casey Middlestat's more now ready, has the experience. You can trust him in that 2C role. But I wish I could know how many of those phone calls that happen around the trade deadline end in like a F you and hang up, right? Or some sort
just
of
like a laugh, like at this guy's. Like Chris looking at Joe like, is this guy serious? Danny this is the respected. Are you serious? You see what he offered me? Like, yeah.
While we're on the topic of NCAA, usually as teams start to fall out of the tournament or their teams don't even make it to the tournament, you start to see the college free agents get signed. And usually we're used to seeing some end up with the Colorado Avalanche. Nothing's happened in that front. Nothing yet. There's still 4 teams. But again, there's a whole lot of teams that are done and you could be signing players from.
I've only seen a handful of signings come through. I know Colin Graff signed. That was like the big name. He went to San Jose. There was another kid, I forget his name, that went to Toronto. I haven't seen as many come through yet. I think I got to pull up the dates for when the signings happened last year. Jason Polin and Sam Malinsky, and there was a third one, Andre Pavel. But I want to say they were somewhere around this time frame, late March, early April. So I'm assuming it'll start to pick up. Colorado, I'm guessing, will get at least one guy eventually. Because if you're Chris McFarland, you're selling 2 things. Number one, you're coming to a great organization, which always doesn't matter. Like, people see a player like Colin Graff, who's supposed to be, one of the biggest, if not the biggest college free agent this year, and we'll see what that means in the end. But like the best version of a college free agent you can end up getting is like a Tyler Bozak, who I think went to DU. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he went to DU. And that was like a 40, 50 point second-ish, third-ish line center. So like that's about the max of what you usually get out of a college free agent. Logan O'Connor is considered a huge hit for a college free agent that the Avalanche got. So Colin Graff, people always do this every single year. It's like, why would that guy choose San Jose? It's simple. He's going to play 20 minutes a night. He's not going to do that in Denver. So you can, if you're Chris McFarland, you can bring on the guys that are looking for the Logan O'Connor type of career. The bottom 6, Sam Malinsky, third pair, Andre Pavel looking to be a 4th-line center with the Avs. Those are the guys that the Avalanche could intrigue because we look at the salary cap picture, you and Jesse, and we're all probably going to talk about this for the next 3-4 months. We're looking at another season where the playoffs are going to end with or without a Stanley Cup championship, and then you're going to see 4 or 5 Avalanche depth players gone. Starting with maybe Jonathan Drouin, Zach Parise, Yakov Trenin, Brandon Duhaime, Andrew Cogliano. Those are 5 pending UFAs, and I'm probably missing 1 or 2. There's Yoel Kiviranta. So you're the Avs. You're selling. We have our top 6 with Landeskog. We have our 3rd line, the Roaring 20s as they call them, and then on the 4th line, you have literally nobody signed except for Kovalenko. So those are the kind of guys that the Avalanche could really sell. Hey, there's an opportunity here. And if Landeskog's not ready, if they don't end up signing Drouin, hey, there might be an opportunity to play in the top 6.
That's not a bad thought. I guess these next thoughts aren't exactly my own. They were brought to me by somebody else. But what's your stance on looking at the former NCAA guys that the Avalanche do have right now? The Ben Myers, Wyatt Amat, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they've gotten exactly. If you're an outsider, you're looking at those guys and saying, yep, man, they have not gotten a fair shake. They went there to hopefully try to crack the Avalanche lineup. And then you throw in the caveat of Sam Cronin being gone. We know how much these young prospects loved
Greg Cronin,
sorry.
Yeah.
Loved playing for him and loved kind of learning under him, and now he's out of the picture. How much, I guess, do you think that plays a factor in the Avalanche ability to keep bringing these guys in?
The Greg Cronin question's
Who's Sam Cronin? How did I get that?
Probably Sam Malinsky is what I was thinking of. So when you said
look
Cronin,
up Sam Cronin
I was
while
like,
you
who's
talk.
that? So the Greg Cronin question is a big one for me, man. The Avalanche really struck gold with that guy as the AHL coach for a while. And maybe in a decade from now, they're going to be looking at him the way Columbus looks at letting Jared Bednar go when they had John Tortorella coaching in Columbus. So I can't speak to that completely because obviously I'm not down in Loveland. I didn't have a strong relationship with Greg Cronin. I've seen him 3 or 4 times in my life. The big one for me is when you said, like, when you looked at Wyatt Amma and like Jason Polin and all these guys, Ben Myers obviously, who now plays for Anaheim with Greg Cronin. He's been reunited there. The Avs traded him for a 5th rounder. When you look at those kinds of guys, yeah, you're going to be a college free agent being like, these guys came in expecting to do this. But athletes are competitive. Mm-hmm. They don't think that way.
I'm better than Ben Myers. I'm better than Wyatt
Not just
Amat.
that. They're going to look and be like, well, Logan O'Connor's a Stanley Cup champion. And what was he at DU? He was just named captain. He was a energy guy. And Sam Malinsky. Every single time, hey, let's search Sam Malinsky's name on Twitter. Holy crap, they love him in Denver. And now you're looking at the Avalanche, and it's like, okay, Sean Walker's probably going to walk. You've traded Bowen Byram. Jack Johnson's a pending UFA. You may or may not pick between Walker or Manson. We'll see what happens. Sam Malinsky's probably going to be a full-time NHLer next season. So those are the kind of guys that they would look at. You can also do that with other teams. But if you're a competitive athlete, which is what these guys are, 22, 23, 24 years old, hell of a lot more confidence when you get into your 30s and you're like, I don't know if I could do that anymore. These kids are looking at someone like Logan O'Connor. They're looking also at Colin Graff and say, yeah, I can be the next Colin Graff and put up 50 points in San Jose, or I could be the next Logan O'Connor and be a fan favorite, win a Stanley Cup and looking for a second and a third and a fourth because he's loved in Denver. And now Logan O'Connor's 1 year away from pending UFA status next summer of 2025. And if Miles Wood got 6 years at 2.5, Logan, my friend, you're going to get some good money, whether with the Avs or elsewhere. So, if I'm a college free agent and I have that competitive mindset in my low 20s and I've been driven my entire life by this competitiveness, those are the kind of guys that I'm looking at.
But not Sam Cronin.
Sam Cronin, did he come out on Google or did they just say WTF ?
So he's a former Rapids player.
Oh, interesting.
Sam Cronin, that's where. And I got
So it actually was a guy.
It was a guy in my brain. I wasn't just making up an imaginary person. And I got my start in this industry covering the Rapids. So that's where that name was in my brain. Let's move on here. Avalanche, I think, had a really good win last night in Minnesota. Really good being that there was goal scoring up and down the lineup. And Minnesota was just playing a desperate game, right? They had to win that game. They really were coming out fighting. So to be able to not only hold them off, but beat them by 3 goals, I thought it was pretty impressive. Jonathan Drouin's night, really the biggest thing to talk about. What's been working for Jonathan Drouin? We've seen the last couple weeks an uptick in his game.
Man, that's such an interesting player. Because there have been times this season where I've looked at Jonathan Drouin and said, this guy's not going to give you what even Evan Rodriguez gave you in the playoffs. And if you guys remember Evan Rodriguez in the playoffs, regular season, 36.66 games. We all remember that. In the playoffs, Evan Rodriguez became that like high energy, I'm going to hit everything and everybody. It reminds me, this is going to be vintage. It reminds me of in 2010 when the Avs snuck in against San Jose and everybody's like, who's this TJ Gagliardi guy skating around hitting everybody? God, he's a pest. He's so annoying. Rodriguez reminded me of that last year. Granted, with more skill than Gagliardi ever had, Rodriguez is going to have a long NHL career, and he's going to fit in really well with what Florida does. So I've had moments this season where I've looked at Drouin and said, God, I wish the Avalanche had that guy. But then I've had moments this season where I'm like, Drouin is playing 26, 27 minutes a night. He's got that top 4 draft pick pedigree, and he's never really lost it. He's had multiple 50-point seasons. He's now at 51 points. It's his 3rd time. He's 2 points away from his career high, 3 away from passing his career high. My favorite, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. 4 seasons, the last 4 seasons combined of the Montreal Canadiens, 17 goals. Wow. This year with the Avalanche, 17 goals. He's matched it in 74 games, 73 games, something like that. I don't have that off the top of my head. He also had, this is my favorite part, first goal of the season, Nathan MacKinnon assisted by Mikko Rantanen and Jonathan Drouin. That's the only point he had. First goal of the season. That's the only point he had the first 10 games. There was a healthy scratch involved in there when the Avalanche were trying to figure out both Drouin and Tatar. Are any of these guys going to fit? Mm-hmm. One did, one didn't. So now in the last 64 games, he's got 50 points. That's a nearly 70-point pace. He's doing well. You put him on any line, he'll give you like great effort. There was that like made up second line at one point with like Johansson and Drouin. Obviously, ever since Middlestad's been here, he got a chance with Middlestat. Now he's back with McKinnon and Mikko. You put him with Colton and Wood, fits right. And like he fits everywhere. He's given you 60, 65-point pace kind of player for the last 90% of the hockey season. It just works. And above all else, his attitude fits. Great friend of Nathan MacKinnon, which is a big deal in this industry. People want to play with guys they like. You like him and you play well with him. Perfect match.
Well, I don't know if you got the chance to see his interview last night after the game with Jesse, but he really credits that extra practice that him and McKinnon put in, right? And before and after each time they're on the ice, they're out there doing things together, and it's starting to pay dividends. So I think that alone is a huge step in the right direction, because that's time to get better that other people aren't necessarily putting in. But Nathan McKinnon's driving him to put in that extra effort, and now you're seeing it come to fruition. What I love is just he also, in that same interview, credits the line mates he's with, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen. And sure, I think I could maybe get a point in an NHL game with those two on my line. But I think what's really worked is they've learned to play together. I think earlier in the year, Drouin's hockey IQ is so good and so high. That's what makes him such a good fit with those two guys. But for a while, it didn't seem to fully be clicking. You see that Nathan McKinnon goal last night, the fourth goal of the game, and that pass over to Drouin, I think it was a nice little saucer on a 2-on-1.
Yep.
Just a perfectly executed pass. And that's the vision, that's the playmaking skill he has. And I think it took Mikko and Nate maybe a small stretch of time to get used to that high level of playmaking ability, along with their high level of play as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we discount and we don't talk enough about their chemistry playing with the Halifax Mooseheads. And people might look at that and be like, well, that's crazy. Like, that was such a long time ago. But that was around the same time, 2013, 2014. Well, 2013, because 2014 was his rookie season. That was around the same time that, Duchesne and O'Reilly built this chemistry under Patrick Wall. Landeskog and O'Reilly built this chemistry in 2012. Like, these are guys that I remember last summer when the Nashville Predators signed Ryan O'Reilly. I don't remember if the Duchesne buyout came right before or right after. But there was a moment in my head where I said, man, imagine if these guys get together again. I can actually see it working, because 10 years ago they did it, and they did really well. They both had career years that year. So, we don't talk enough about how much that chemistry means. Is it, this isn't the equivalent of, two third-liners playing together. We're not like, Daniel Winnick and Ryan O'Reilly are back together. No, it's like these are two top guys that were running the league pretty much in the QMJHL with the Halifax Mooseheads, now playing with Mikko Rantanen, who McKinnon already has chemistry with, bringing in a guy that he talks and spoke with over the summer to bring him here. The practice that they're doing, they've done it before. They are, yes, 27, 28 years old, but they've been doing this since they were 17 or 18, and it's hard to really not think of that chemistry that they had over a decade ago and really taking it into account. It does matter. The practice that you're speaking of, we've been seeing it since training camp. I remember there was one day during training camp, 5th or 6th day, where Nathan McKinnon looked at us and said, all right, you guys ready to speak? And as we were walking up to him, he said, no more questions about Drouin, because he was asked about it every single day, because they were on early, they're off late, and they're still like that. When we go down at Family Sports by the dressing room to enter the dressing room, Nathan McKinnon and Jonathan Drouin are still working on those saucer passes. Saucer pass one-timer, saucer pass one-timer, and they go back and forth.
Right, and I think at the beginning of the year, that was just okay, cool. They're getting extra practice in together. But you span that over the entire season, and you can notice the difference. You can see them getting better. So looking at Drouin, like you mentioned, he is a UFA this offseason. I think including him, everybody would be silly assuming he leaves. Because you have a year like that with a team like this, I think you're going to stay.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to even be willing to take less to stay, right? We already knew he took less to come here in the first place. I think he's going to take less to stay and continue this trajectory of his career, because I think right now is probably the pinnacle of what he's done throughout his life. I know he was on some pretty good Tampa Bay teams, but this has to be his favorite window of his career so far.
Yeah, so I struggle and I go back and forth with this, and I'm pulling up some numbers right now. He had his entry-level contract signed by Steve Yzerman, and then he gets traded to the Montreal Canadiens, and Marc Bergevin signs him to a 6-year, $33 million contract. So before this season, for the last 6 years, he has made $5.5 million a season.
Jeez.
So he's gotten a lot of money before.
Yeah.
So I struggled. This is the part that I struggle with. 2 years ago, we spoke about Nazem Kadri.
I knew you were going there. I just knew it.
You can't possibly leave. You're a god in Denver. 87 points in 71 games. You had a suspension last year, in the 2021 playoffs. 8-game suspension. Everybody dunked on you. You can't trust this guy. You're a liability in the playoffs, as he so famously mentioned after winning the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
You can't possibly trust this guy. Then Nathan McKinnon gets injured. Nazem Kadri's your top line center. The rest is history. 7 years, $49 million contract. So you look at someone like Jonathan Drouin. There's two parts to this. I'm playing with Nathan McKinnon. This is amazing. I love this season. Great attitude. And then there's the competitive athlete. Well, do I really need Nathan McKinnon to do this again? Or did I need Nathan McKinnon to jumpstart my career back up? And now I'm 27, 28 years old. I just put up, pick a number, 57 points with the Avalanche, won a Stanley Cup or lost in the Western Conference Final, whatever it may be. Let me go out and get another 5x5 contract. I'm in my prime. So I struggle with that because we said the same thing about Kadri. We're going to say the same thing about players moving forward. When we say taking less, what does taking less mean? Because
$5 million to league min is a huge difference, right?
Well, yeah, but $5.5 million to league min is coming off the last 4 seasons combined. He had 17 goals. Now he's going into an offseason at the age of 28 years old, born in 1995. So just like Nathan McKinnon, he'll be 29 at some point in this calendar year. I don't know when his birthday is. And he's going into the offseason knowing very well that he just put up 50-something, 60-something points. Evan Rodriguez at 36 points in 66 games got a 3x3 contract. And that was before the salary cap was going up. So now you're looking at Jonathan Drouin, and it's like, is he going to take $6 million to play for the San Jose Sharks? No, of course not. He's going to go somewhere where it makes sense, just like Rodriguez did. Rodriguez said, I'm going to use the Stanley Cup contender to sign a contract with another Stanley Cup contender. In fact, the team that just made the Stanley Cup final, but they have more cap space than the one that won the Cup the year before. So that's what I struggle with. What does it mean for him to take less? What it means to me, a 60-point player can get $5.5-6 million on the market. He might come to the Avalanche and say, yeah, sure, I'll take less.
Give me 4 or 5.
Give me 4.5.
Yeah.
Can you give me 4.5 times 5? But I'm seeing a lot of, and I'm not discounting this idea because for like every person, this is the thing, every person is different. Nazem Kadri chose to make a decision. Evan Rodriguez chose to make a decision. Jonathan Drouin might not choose to make that same decision. People are all different. You can't look at other players and be like, well, he did this, so surely this guy's going to do this. Everybody's got a different mindset. Jonathan Drouin, we know, at one point had mental health issues. He spoke publicly about them. He entered the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. When the Montreal Canadiens made the Stanley Cup Final in 2021, he wasn't there. He didn't play. He left sometime in the regular season. I believe he missed the whole playoffs. I could be wrong there, but I'll take a look in a second. He wasn't part of that Stanley Cup Final against the Tampa Bay Lightning, his former team. Otherwise, that would have been a huge story. So that's the thing that I struggle with. For all I know, he could sign one of these, but I see a lot of fans in my mentions like, he loves it here. Nathan McKinnon, 2 years, 2.75. Like,
I think the difference is because you just touched on it. People are different, right?
Yeah.
And I think along with that, I think the buildup and the message is different. Like, I don't think Nazem Kadri was afraid to tell us, yeah, if the Avalanche offer me the most money, I'll sign with the Avalanche.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Kadri would have taken less to stay here too. Calgary gave him 7 times 7. I bet you, I can't confirm this, but I bet you if the Avalanche gave him 7 times 6.25, he would have been like, yeah, hell yeah. What am I losing? $750,000 over 7 years. So instead of $49 million over the next 7 years, I'll make 45. But the Avalanche didn't give him that. 45 to 49 guaranteed, $4 million difference. The Avalanche offered him a $25 million guaranteed contract over 4 years, 6.25. So, players will take less, but what the big question I have, similar to Kadri, what does taking less mean? Does it mean Drouin will take 4 years at $4.5 million? That seems like taking less than what he can make on the open market. Or what I'm seeing in my DMs, again, I'm seeing a lot of people tweet at me like, Drouin's going to sign 3 years for 2.75. I'm like, is he really? Miles Wood makes 2.5.
Yeah, that seems low. But yeah, I think there's also, as you brought up, the whole mental health side of it that I think he values.
That's the part, yeah.
There's when you say that he values it, he literally, there's a dollar amount that he's willing to be flexible with to stay in the market that he knows he likes versus maybe going to one that's unknown to him.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure if he goes to San Jose, it's not going to be a crazy market like it was in Montreal for him, but I think there's some give and take with the competitive side too.
Jonathan Drouin's playoff career, 2014-15, the Tampa Bay Lightning made the Stanley Cup Final and lost to the Chicago Blackhawks. He played 6 games at 10 minutes per game, so he was there but not really there. Tampa Bay Lightning, the following season in 2015-16, I believe made the Eastern well, yeah, they did because 17 games. You can't do that in 2 rounds. Made the Eastern Conference Final against the Pittsburgh Penguins. 17 games, he had 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. Pretty good, playing 17 minutes a night. 2020 in the bubble, 10 games, 7 points for the Montreal Canadiens. That's it. That's where it stops. 2021, he was not there. He played 44 of the 56 regular season games because I do remember it was around March, and I remember the regular season ended like late April or whatever the heck.
So his
was.
last playoff game was in the bubble.
His last playoff game was in the bubble. 10 games, 7 points. And then before that, it was the Tampa Bay Lightning third round run in 2015-16 where he had 14 points in 17 games. So if this guy comes out, he's done it in the playoffs. What this says to me, take out the first year, 6 games, 0 points, 0 this, 0 that. That's the equivalent of like Ben Myers last year, 10 minutes a night. He's not given an opportunity. But in the last 27 playoff games he's played, 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points in 27 games in the 2 years where it mattered. And I remember Montreal, I think they beat Pittsburgh that year in the play-in weird thing in the bubble. So this is a guy that can do it in the playoffs. So if the Avalanche, again, let's say the Avalanche play 20 postseason games, whether that means they won the Cup or they lost in the Western Conference Final or, God forbid, losing the Stanley Cup Final, what if he's got 18 points in those 20 games?
Well, and I think that's encouraging for people to hear because I think, the anxiety and, again, the mental health thing stands out in all of our minds because we've all heard about it, right? So I think naturally we're inclined to think, oh, wow, well, when the stakes are higher, he might be more inclined to crumble. But no, the stats prove that when he's in the playoffs, he actually elevates his game.
And this was a long time ago, sure, but again, 27, 28 years old now. Well, 28, not 27. 28 years old now, loaded with confidence. That's about the age where you know what you are. Mm-hmm. You know what you are. You're confident in who you are as an athlete and as a human and as a person. You know what your strengths are. And you're going into the playoffs knowing very well you have had this year with the Colorado Avalanche, playing back with Nathan MacKinnon. You're crushing it. You're on their top line. You're in their top 6. Nobody's taking that away from you. I don't even think a healthy Gabe Landeskog today would take that away from, granted, Landeskog stepping into the lineup, not Landeskog pre-injury. So he's really got a lot going for him. I'm so curious to know how this thing happens, the contract negotiation this summer, because he was nominated, the PHWA, myself, Corey, and a lot of the other Professional Hockey Writers Association in the Denver market. We had to nominate someone for the Bill Masterton Trophy, which is not quite the comeback trophy of the year. It kind of is, but it's more of the perseverance and commitment to hockey and so on and so forth. And we spoke about someone like Sam Girard, who entered the NHL PA Assistance Program this year. But Drouin had to take the cake, and that was the one that I argued for was Jonathan Drouin. It was the guy that came in, has been part of the PA program before, just like Jonathan Drouin, and turned his entire career on a dime this year. So he's got the right attitude. He's got the right level of focus that the Avalanche want going into the postseason. I am so dang curious. We all know who his agent is, and that guy doesn't really cut deals either. So we'll see where that goes.
Is there part of you that thinks maybe there have already been conversations had and the fact that they don't have a deal yet?
I wouldn't go that far because I think the Avalanche need to know that they're getting somebody that they trust all throughout the year. The Avalanche are in a position of strength right now. The Avalanche are in the position of, and I'm not saying can he hopefully he leaves or anything, but the Avalanche are in a position of strength of saying if Jonathan Drouin leaves, we'll go find the next Jonathan Drouin, just like we did with Evan Rodriguez, just like we tried with Tomas Tatar. It didn't work. We got a free draft pick asset out of him. I think it was a 5th rounder. They got a 5th for Tatar. They got a 5th for Ben Myers. Pretty dang good.
I don't know. I feel like there's only so many people Nathan MacKinnon likes.
Well,
I don't know if you're going to find another Jonathan Drouin.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're never going to find that kind of connection. But, I mean, you and I spoke about it a lot last year. Drouin has completely exceeded expectations in my life, in my eyes. Mm-hmm. But Evan Rodriguez was a pretty good fit. 36 points in 66 games. That's a guy that was, about a 45-point pace over an 82-game season. And in the playoffs, he was really good. Mm-hmm. I liked him in the postseason. So they went out and got that guy. Obviously, he signed for $2 million. They tried Tatar at 1.5. They tried Drouin at $825K. I'm sure if I scroll through Cap Friendly right now, I can find a player on a team who's having a down year, who's going into free agency, who's probably sitting there kicking himself, being like, I've cost myself a lot of money. I need to rejuvenate my career. Here comes Chris McFarland on the phone. Gabe Landeskog's coming back. He's our top 6 winger. You're going to play on the 3rd line or the 4th line. But also, hey, here's my selling point. We get injured like crazy every freaking year. Gabe Landeskog might retire after 4 games. We need someone like you. You got skill. You have value.
Yeah.
Alexander Barabanov. Like, who knows? Like, that's just one name off the top of my head. So, like, the Avalanche are in a position of strength. So, all of this goes back to your question. Do you feel like the fact that there is no contract now? No, because the Avalanche are in a position of strength of saying, let's see what he can do in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
We know some players get you to the playoffs. Some players do the thing in the playoffs. The Avalanche have been very fortunate, and why they've won a Stanley Cup and why they are a threat. Their guys perform in the playoffs.
Is that decision going to cost them money, though? Do you think if they would have signed them maybe back in December, they'd get them at a better deal than they would after the playoffs?
I don't think so. I think Drouin is going to make what he makes. And that's the dumbest sentence I've ever said in my life. Of course, he's gonna make what he makes. Mm-hmm. Yes, sure. But I think his contract, he's gonna get exactly what he deserves. I think the big thing for me is he gonna get 4.5? Let's just use the example we kept throwing out. Is he gonna get $4.5 million times 4 years from a team looking for offense? The New York Islanders, the Detroit Red Wings, a team trying to get into the playoffs that's like, we need more scoring in the regular season. We need a guy to get us there. Or is he going to get it from the Avalanche because he did it in the playoffs too? So I don't think he's going to cost himself money by not signing yet. And again, in my opinion, I have 0 ways of proving this. Maybe I'll ask him next elevator ride. But in my opinion, I don't even think Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic have called Alan Walsh yet and said, hey, let's talk extension. They want to see what he's going to get in the playoffs. Because, like, legitimately, there is a scenario, not that I'm saying this is going to happen, but there is a scenario where the Avalanche lose in the second round and they play 11 games over 2 rounds. Let's say they win in 5 and then they lose in 6 or something like that. And in those 11 games, Jonathan Drouin is 1 goal, 3 assists, -7. Like, that's a possible scenario. Mm-hmm. And then Chris McFarland's going to look and be like, we'll bring this guy back to play with O'Connor and Wood and Colton, but
on our terms. Yeah.
But on our 3 years, $2 million. Mm-hmm. Like, now even the contract that are in my mentions, like, that's too much for us. Because he'll give us 50 points in the playoffs, but when it matters, he doesn't do it.
I like how you brought up the elevator rides. It's like it's a brief moment that sometimes we do get.
Those are great. I gotta say, like. So post game, we all go into the elevator. We go down, and it always ends up being the exact, like, if you're on the first elevator ride, because it takes 2 elevator halts to get us all down there, you usually end up with both the home and the road team front office rooms on the elevator. So like, there's been times this season, I mention this all the time. There have been times this season where I've been, LA Kings are in town. There's 5 people in an elevator, and 3 of them are me, Joe Sakic, and Rob Blake. Chris McFarland there too, because Joe Sakic, Chris, like, they're kind of glued at the hip. So 4 people in an elevator: me, Rob Blake, Joe Sakic, Chris McFarland, and I'm just like going down like, this is so cool.
It's crazy, but there's a obvious separation that they want between us media and those kind of guys, but we do get a brief little 30-second elevator ride.
They're so fun too. And
to
Joe
throw
Sakic,
a little comment of something. They're always so nice.
Joe Sakic is so nice. Chris McFarland's a little quieter. He's a little more reserved.
Obviously, we're not like, hey, what are you doing with Drouin this summer? No, but we'll throw like, you like that defense tonight, or something about the game.
I think it was the Rangers game the other day. Joe Sakic, like, we got in the elevator. Sakic just looked and went, that game. Like he's a hockey fan. It's the coolest thing. Mm-hmm. I've walked with Joe Sakic to the dressing room, talking about back in not this past season, but late 2022, November, December of 2022, talking about college football and how Alabama should have been the 4th seed and not Ohio State because his kid goes to Alabama. And I'm talking about Michigan finally beating Ohio State and making it to the Final Four and, like, eventually losing to TCU and their opportunity to make the national championship. And we're talking about football for like 5 minutes. Like, it's really like, these guys will give you something. We did speak about Jeremy Hansel. This is something that was a little more off the record, but nothing that I can't share. We all remember the Avalanche last year. They drafted Jeremy Hansel, overager, in like the 5th or 6th round. Comes into training camp, does pretty well. March 8th was the trade deadline. So March 7th, the Avalanche signed Jeremy Hansel to an entry-level contract. 30 minutes later, the Avalanche trade Jeremy Hansel in the Yakov-Trenin deal. So we got in the elevator, and it was Megan Angley, who is very connected with the prospects a lot more than us.
She was just on This Is Fun.
Yeah,
Check
she was just on with Jesse at DNVR, and she looked at Chris, and she was like, you traded Hansel. kind of like joking around. He was like, oh yeah. So I asked him, I was like, how did that happen? Like, did Nashville say like, we don't know if this guy's going to sign when he's here, like sign him and give him to us. We like this prospect. He was like, no, he was like, it was all coincidence. We signed the kid because we were ready. And then they said, we want like a prospect defenseman or whatever. And they just so happened to want Jeremy Hansel 30 minutes after we signed him. And we ended up getting Graham Sword back, which is a player that maybe they don't like as much, who's very similar. WHL defenseman, high-scoring point producer, very similar to what Jeremy Hansel was before he came into the Avalanche organization. So it was all just a big coincidence. And the reason why I do believe what Chris McFarland is saying is because the Avs actually wrote out a page-long press release for Jeremy Hansel and sent it out. And the PR guy was also in the elevator, Luke, and he said, thankfully, I sent out the Jeremy thing before he got traded because I was, able to like show the work that I did. So like it was all just a big coincidence. But there are those elevator rides. You do get a little bit of information. It's where you build the most connection. So like I'm genuinely curious how it's gonna go with this Jonathan Drouin thing. But like if I could, Chris McFarland again, he doesn't speak as much as Joe. But if I can hear like next time there's a big game for Drouin, I should have done it after the Penguins game because the Penguins game was really cool too. It was in an elevator with Joe Sakic, Chris McFarland, Kyle Dubas, and Jason Spezza, who's Kyle Dubas' right-hand man with Pittsburgh now, as he was in Toronto. And I should have looked at Joe and went, man, Jonathan Drouin, great player. Guy should stay here. Like just throw something out to see what I can get. But I'm genuinely curious to know where that negotiation goes.
Let's look at the race for the Central. I think that's really what's motivating the Avalanche right now. They really want to get to the top of the Central.
In fact, look it up and look at it. Yeah, go for it.
I think what stinks and what's tough for the Avalanche, it's definitely an uphill battle because if you look at the remaining schedule,
it's tough games.
There's only one team that the Avalanche are playing that's not a playoff team.
And it's the one they beat yesterday, I believe.
And it's the one they beat yesterday. You look at Dallas' schedule, they still have Chicago. They still have Seattle. Yep. They still have the Blues to play. They have a relatively easier schedule heading to these last 5 games or so. So it's going to be tough for the Avalanche.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I had to say.
So here's the thing. I have no issue with the Avalanche playing the Winnipeg Jets.
I do for one reason.
Connor Hellebuyck.
No, if they send us to Winnipeg, I really don't want to go.
I don't think I'm traveling in the first round, so you enjoy.
I think Jesse might be. We'll see. If it's Winnipeg, I'll be like, I don't need to go for the first round. Let's save our money.
Got a kid at home.
We got to save money, right?
Yeah. So I had no issue with them playing Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets in the first round. Reality is, if you're going to win the Stanley Cup, you got to play good teams. Mm-hmm. Nashville's got a great goalie in UC Saros. Winnipeg's got Connor Hellebuyck. Dallas has Jake Ottinger's had a terrible season up until the last 5 games. Suddenly he decided, I'm good again. So that could be an issue because Dallas looks real dang good. But I need to spit a couple facts here.
All right,
starting with number 1. We need to have a talk.
Do you need a beat behind you?
But we need to have a talk about the 2022 Stanley Cup final or Stanley Cup playoffs.
Okay.
The Avalanche played David Riddick.
Mm-hmm.
They got to the second round. Who'd they face?
Bennington.
For how long? 2 games before Kadri ran him over?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or was it Barbashev? That whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up with Ville Husso. They got to the third round. Who'd they face? Edmonton. Mike Smith.
Okay. Oh, brutal.
They didn't face a tough goalie until they got to Andrei Vasilevsky.
Mm-hmm.
What they do to Vasilevsky, they beat him in 6 games. They had a 3-1 series lead. They lit him up in game 2. The guy refused to get pulled. So they can do it. So when I look at the Avalanche and I say, I would love for them to play LA in the first round and face a Cam Talbot or frickin' Phoenix Copley or the new guy on the block there, David Riddick. Like, that's who's running the LA Kings in the crease. But the reality is, to get to the Stanley Cup final, you should be facing good goalies. Don't think you're going to go 16-4 if you win the Cup this year like you did in 2022. Given the goalies you're going to face. But I have no issue with the Avalanche facing Winnipeg. Can they win the division? Yes, absolutely. The reality is they have one more game against the Dallas Stars. You win that game, both of you have 5 remaining games outside of that game, and Dallas is up by a point. So this is where that loss to Columbus starts to hurt a little bit more, or the one to Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a season-ending thing. Like, beating Columbus and Montreal and not beating Columbus and Montreal isn't going to make or break your playoffs. Whether you play Nashville/LA or Vegas in the first round, which is looking more like LA now, or you face Winnipeg, you should be the favorite. You should win the series. Winnipeg's a good team, but you're the Colorado Avalanche.
But, and this is what I've been doing, is making sure. So they've played twice, only twice this year.
Winnipeg's won both.
Won both.
Okay.
And not only that,
You may,
one 4-2 win, one 6-2 win.
You recorded a video, and one of them, Ivan Prosvetov, was the starter. You recorded a video yesterday where you spoke about the Avalanche's road record. They're 18-15-5. At one point, they were 13-14-5.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, they are by
so now they're
the
18,
mathing. They're 5-1.
19-15-5.
19, yes, thank you. So they're 6-1 now. If you add yesterday's game, they're 6-1 in their last 7 road games. You made that video. I look at that video and I say, this is all true. It's factual information. But a majority of those, 6-1 in their last 7 road games, the majority of the road games before that were when your second line consisted of Ryan Johansson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a much different team now.
It's a much different team. When you're on the road, you don't get last change. The road team, every single time they face the Avalanche, we all know coaches have video sessions. Every single time a road team faced the Colorado Avalanche, you know what they did? They got all their players in a room, and they said, let's start with the top line. Hold them to 3 points, and you had a good night. Nathan McKinnon's going to crush you. Mikko Rantanen is going to crush you. Whether it's Jonathan Drouin, a healthy Val Nichushkin, or Turi Lehkonen pre-injury, post-injury, that line's going to hurt you. Coach, what about after that? Okay. Here's the third line. Ross Colton and Miles Wood are kind of reckless abandon out there, especially Miles Wood. It's just like car accidents everywhere.
I think we should get a jar, and for every breakaway chance that Miles Wood misses, we add something to it, and then when he finally scores, we can whip out that jar and buy us something.
Do you remember
nice.
the first one he scored this year?
I think that's his last one. His last breakaway goal.
Two.
Breakaway goal.
He scored a breakaway goal. Excuse me. It may have been shorthanded at Ball Arena against his former team, the New Jersey Devils. My mentions, a bunch of Devils fans, just like, where the hell was that? Like, come on, dude. You finally scored on one of those. So, like, this isn't a meme. It's a real thing that Devils fans have been speaking about for years. Darren Helm used to have that reputation in Detroit. Fast as hell, breakaways all the time, doesn't score shit. Like, it was the same type of thing for Darren Helm growing up in his career. But, you know, they skip over the second line. They go to the third line. Miles Wood, reckless abandon. Car accidents everywhere. The guy's just crashing and banging, and he's got his boy Ross Colton doing the exact same thing. But, Coach, what about the second line? Don't worry about them. So here's what we're going to do with the Avalanche. Every single time the second line ices the puck, we're going to put our top guys out there. We're going to put them in a defensive zone draw. Johansson's good at those, but if he loses it, forecheck, get the puck back, let's score a goal. The road record pre-trade deadline doesn't concern me.
No,
it's a different team.
I absolutely agree with that.
And that's exactly the same thing I would say about the Winnipeg Jets. So that was to go back to your initial point. They've played 2 games against the Winnipeg Jets. One of them, Ivan Prosvetov, was the starter. The second one was that 4-2 game. That one was a little bit closer. I think there was an empty netter involved in that one. That one was a little bit closer. Again, I think Thomas Tatar was still on the team with that one, or that might be the second game. It was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
The Avalanche today, the roster they've built now, has not faced the Winnipeg Jets yet.
Well, and you know what I found interesting, and you've heard it out of Jared Bednar a couple times lately, how much he groups the last 10 games. It's almost like he only really values the last 10 games, whether he's evaluating an opponent or his own team. He's brought up the last 10 games several times in the last couple weeks. So I thought that was interesting. So to that, if you look at the last 10 road games, everything's been great. The road
6-1 of their last 7.
Right. So yeah, I'm with you.
So the thing with me is, and this is something, again, I wish I had the research already done, but it's something I want to write about and talk about speak about on my podcast as well, is the Avalanche last season going into the postseason, to the playoffs. It was like, just wait till they're healthy. Gabe Landeskog aside, wait till they're healthy. Everybody else. And what happened in the playoffs? Josh Manson came back. Bowen Byram came back. Darren Helm came back. Both the Johnsons were healthy, and then Jack got hurt, and he told me the other day he pulled his groin in pregame skate. That's why Eric Johnson ended up playing for him instead, because we learned that morning EJ was going to be the healthy scratch. So
And
Jack Johnson aside.
Wasn't EJ like, oh, what? No, what are you talking about?
And then we spoke to Jared Bednar, and we remember. Were you there for the Jared Bednar at Family Sports?
I think so.
So Jared Bednar at Family Sports, the day after, if you guys remember Game 1 last year, Jack Johnson was taking line rushes. Eric Johnson was skating with the extras with like McDermott and whoever the hell at the time. And we're like, oh my God, the Avalanche have all 7 of their defensemen healthy, and they're going to play Jack Johnson with Bowen Byram on the third pair and scratch EJ.
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy, which at the time, to be honest with you, Jack was just playing better. So it was like kind of a revelation at the time. It was like, oh my God, EJ's going to get healthy scratched. And then pregame skate happens, pregame warm-up, 6:30 p.m., whatever, before the opening draw. And NHL PR, Avalanche PR passes out the roster sheet. Jack Johnson's written, Eric Johnson healthy scratch. Then, puck drop, Jack Johnson ends up being the healthy scratch. Eric Johnson's in the lineup. I got this paper. I'm looking at it. It says Jack. I'm like, is that? Yeah, it says Jack. What the hell's going on here?
Was this a typo?
So the next day, we speak to Jared Bednar about it, and I asked him what went into the decision initially to want to sit Eric Johnson and play Jack before Jack ended up getting hurt. And he said, how did you know? Who said we were going to do that? Like he was trying to like play it cool. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, it was written on the roster sheet that we got. And Jared Bednar looked over at Brendan McNicholas and went, oh, it was. We'll have to talk about that. And like made a joke about it. But the Avalanche were healthy. It was a funny thing at the time. But the Avalanche were healthy. And they got everybody back together for Game 1. This year, I know Val Nichushkin's out right now, but he's coming back. Yakov Trenin didn't play yesterday again. He's coming back soon. They're healthy already. Mm-hmm. They've already had Nichushkin and, obviously O'Connor's done for the year and Landeskog's a question mark. Put those guys aside. Everybody else from the available players are healthy. Mm-hmm. Nichushkin and Trenin were both healthy for like a 5-game stretch. They're both going to come back. They've already seen what this team is when healthy. What this team is when healthy is a team that erased a 5-goal deficit against the Pittsburgh Penguins, which I believe Val didn't even play that game. That was the game where... That was after Montreal, I want to say. Mm-mm. No, other way around. Val did play that game.
Yep.
That was the game where Val wasn't playing well, so Drouin took over the top line. And then the next game was against Montreal. Drouin stayed on the top line. Val was quiet, and then he was injured. So we're like, okay, he was probably playing hurt the last couple games. But they've already seen what their roster can bring. Corey Masisak at the Denver Post wrote a story today about Josh Manson. It's something that him and I were speaking about, and we've all thought about it. He's not a revelation. Josh Manson came back healthy for the playoffs last year and played 4 games, 4.5 games, I think it was, before he ended up leaving. Played.
Healthy.
He was not healthy.
Yeah.
He looked like shit. Josh Manson today looks like the 2022 Josh Manson. He's been healthy. He's playing unbelievable hockey. Mm-hmm. He's going into the playoffs ready. So all I'm trying to say is like the Avalanche team now is not the Avalanche team that played Winnipeg earlier. That's number 1. Number 2, the Avalanche, say what you guys want. Like, I know we speak about injuries, and Gabe Landeskog is not an easy thing to ignore, but this is also his second season. They've been pretty fortunate with injuries this year. Mm-hmm. The Cale Makar thing is so curious. I'll never get over that one. But when Ivan Prosvetov was their backup goalie, I know y'all don't love Georgie right now. If Georgiev got hurt, this team was boned. Mm-hmm. Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, find some wood and knock on it, are heading toward an 82-game season. Casey Middlestat's been healthy since he got here. Arturi Lehkonen was the big one, missed a 30-game stretch. But Josh Manson and Bowen Byram, at one point, they were both out of the lineup for like a week. Josh Manson's played a lot of games. Devon Taves, healthy. Sam Girard, NHL PA Assistance Program. Other than that, healthy. Physically, healthy. Jack Johnson, healthy. Like, they've got a lot of guys playing a lot of games this year. Ross Colton and Miles Wood have, Miles Wood got sick for like 2 weeks or some shit, but like, they've been healthy. Cogliano missed a couple here and there. Healthy.
Yeah.
They're going into the playoffs feeling good. Val Nichushkin finally has a physical injury. He went to the PA Assistance Program for 2 months. Came back out, playing just as good as he did before. Then he had a couple of bad games, lower body injury. He's coming back. I believe Jesse tweeted that he met the team in Minnesota, so he probably saw him post-game. So he's flying with the team to Edmonton. I'm sure he's playing tonight. So this team looks a lot different than the one in October, November, December. This team is feeling better. Their goaltending is playing better. Even Georgie, even though what he did the other day sucks, I hate it. Justus Annunen looks incredible as a backup and a future goalie in this league. This team has a lot of confidence right now. They are playing such good hockey. They're built so well, and they're going to go into the playoffs feeling good, healthy, confident. This is a good team. Winnipeg, LA, Vegas, makes no difference. If you're going to lose in the first round to one of those teams, you're going to lose in the second round to the Dallas Stars. You got to play them as they come and just play the opponent there. If you're looking to win a Stanley Cup, you're playing good teams.
Yeah. No, I think that makes absolute sense. You look at the trade deadline and that streak that they went on after it, the 7-game win streak there. I mean, that had to feel like an addict getting their fix, right? Just like, what's going on with this team? We're struggling, trade deadline, and then 7 straight victories. And they had to be like, yeah, that's the stuff. Yeah. That's what we wanted.
And that one started right before the trade deadline, I believe. It was because I think it was like
it was like a game or two.
The carryover of like shutting out Chicago and whatever. But yeah, then they got the team together and killed it. And it was just great to see.
Right. So I'm with you. I think they're feeling a high confidence that they've, I guess, just higher than they've had all year. And combined with the results that they're given, I think they're playing the perfect style of hockey, right? And I think they're ready to ramp it up to the playoffs, where you look at Dallas, for example, they're peaking maybe right now. Who knows if they carry that momentum into the playoffs, but they're playing their best hockey right now. You look at the Florida Panthers, maybe playing their worst hockey right now. I think the Avalanche are playing fine hockey and just ready to turn it up to 11 here in a couple weeks.
We don't speak enough, maybe we do, in my opinion we don't, about, let me finish the sentence because when I say the name of the beginning, you'll be like, you're crazy. Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, and Mikko Rantanen as playoff performers. They are among the best in NHL history.
I mean, even regular season. I feel like if you take a parlay of Cale Makar to get a point, Nathan MacKinnon to get a goal, and the Avalanche to win all year long, you're going to end up a rich man by the end of the season.
Even with the odds being like minus 300 or some shit.
Well, yeah. Well, once you combine all three of them.
I want to pull out a cool stat about Nathan MacKinnon and those guys in the postseason. It's going to take me a minute to pull it up, but it's going to be about their production in terms of point per game and how they match up in NHL history. Truly, they are among the best in NHL history, because I think it's like, obviously there's guys that have played like one game and have 2 points, so it's a 2 point per game pace. But like, take out those guys, the guys that have played a minimum of X amount of games, like have a chunk of playoff games. I believe, and I'll confirm it right now while you're speaking, but I believe the top 5 in NHL history in points per game in the postseason are like Wayne Gretzky, Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Connor McDavid, and Leon Draisaitl, like something like that. These guys kill it in the playoffs. Difference between McDavid and Draisaitl, McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, look at who their teammates are. Mm-hmm. Edmonton, you take Connor McDavid off that team, go down the shitter. You take Nathan MacKinnon off the Colorado Avalanche, they're still a playoff team. They're not the dominant team that they are, but if Nathan MacKinnon gets injured for 3 months, this team would still be in the playoff race right now. They'd probably be where Winnipeg is or where Nashville is, comfortably in, but not home ice advantage, not all the way at the top of the standings.
Well, and I think a big part of that is the personnel they have. I think they've really done a good job of
the defense,
acquiring players that fit Jared Bednar's style.
Yeah.
So you have that personnel combined with Jared Bednar's coaching. I think you're right. No matter what stars are in the game, they're still going to have a fighting chance because of exactly that. They're fighters. It's a fighting style. It's grind it out. We want to work harder than you. We want to be faster than you. I mean, I feel like that's just a good style of hockey no matter what your players are like. Yeah. And Jared Bednar plays it perfectly.
So MacKinnon ramps it up in the postseason every year.
Mm-hmm.
If you think him reaching 130 points is his ceiling is when the playoffs start.
Yep.
Nathan MacKinnon will continue to impress me. He puts up 140 points in a regular season this year. He's going to go into the playoffs and be a better player than that. I'm not saying in terms of points per game per se, because in the playoffs you're not feasting on a 4-point night against the Minnesota Wild or whatever, Pittsburgh Penguins. Yesterday he had 3 points against Minnesota. But he's going to play at that level.
And like I said, they're playing playoff level teams from here on out. I think that's going to be the perfect perfect chance to really
I also do want to say this one thing. I know we've gone a little bit long, and we probably want to talk about the goaltenders because there's some fun stuff to say there. But Nathan, okay, so something that's really bothered me, and I want to write about it, but I don't know how to approach this with players with Jared Bednar. It's a hard thing to talk about, but if I get good quotes, I'll write about it. we look at the 2022 roster and we look at last year, we look at this year, and we always say, which team was stacked? 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Andre Burakovsky, JT Comfort, third liners. Alex Newhook, third liner. Like, we look at that team, Nazem Kadri, second line, a healthy Landeskog, and we look at the names and we say, yeah, you took out Burakovsky and Comfort, you added Wood and Colton. Wood and Colton are great. They could win you a Stanley Cup. Burakovsky and Comfort are the better players. Those are guys making $5 million in the NHL this year. Wood and Colton combined make 6.5. And some would say Colton makes too much, as I've seen on Twitter. What we don't take into account is the names that are on both teams, how much better they are now than in 2022. 2022 Kel McCarr is better than 2024 Kel McCarr, I'll say that. 2022 Nathan MacKinnon had 88 points in 65 games.
Mm-hmm.
2024 Nathan MacKinnon shits on that guy.
Yeah.
2024 Mikko Rantanen just had his second straight 40-goal season, had 55 goals last year, an Avalanche record, is up to 100 points for the second year in a row. 2022 Mikko Rantanen didn't do that. Also, 2022 Mikko Rantanen in the playoffs scored 5 goals, 3 of them empty netters. 2023 Mikko Rantanen against the Seattle Kraken, 7 goals in 7 games. He was unbelievable last year, and that's on top of the 55-goal regular season. So we don't talk enough about how much better. Jack Johnson this year is better than Jack Johnson back then. Logan O'Connor, same, but he's not going to play.
Jack Johnson has been insane to me all year long, the way he's just bodying people. Like, he's got this old man strength all of a sudden, and with the NHL getting smaller and smaller by the year, right? I think now he's at a point where, like, I'm just going to throw these kids around.
So
I'm with you. Yeah,
so
I like
the
it.
players this year are better, a lot of them, than they were in 2022. We need to. So, like, if you're building, like, if you were going to turn this into an EA Sports thing, Nathan MacKinnon a couple of years ago was like a 93 overall. Nathan MacKinnon this year is like a 98 overall. So, like, we don't take into account, it's not just the names coming in and out. There was a interview I had with Eric Johnson back in 2021 to start of the start of that season. If we remember that summer, Donskoy went to Seattle in the expansion draft. The Avalanche let Brandon Saad walk. You and I did 17,000 podcasts in a row about who's going to be the top six forward. Ended up being Val Nichushkin. Who's going to play with Kadri and Burakovsky? It ended up being Val. But we didn't know because Saad was gone, Donskoy was gone. And I remember asking Eric Johnson something about, like, you guys have lost a handful of pieces. Do you still feel confident about this team? And he said exactly that to me. He said, yes, but the players that we're bringing back have improved, are entering their prime of this. Yep. And he was so, like, I'll never forget that, because 2023 Avalanche, they lost way too much and replaced them with way too not good hockey players, way too many not good hockey players at that time to say the same thing, even though MacKinnon was incredible last year too, and Mikko was too. But comparing this team to 2022, the guys that are coming back look much better. The Avalanche win the Stanley Cup this year. It ain't going to be Kel McCarr winning the Conn Smythe. It's going to be Nathan MacKinnon. He's going to put up like 40 points.
Yeah. No, it's funny how winning the Stanley Cup, you have to get to your best style of hockey ever to win the Stanley Cup.
And they're better now.
And is winning the Stanley Cup that teaches you how to be better. So you have to be the best to learn how to be the best, if that makes sense.
Joe Sakic won the Cup in 1996, his best season. Hart Trophy, 2001.
Right on. Well, I think right there is a good place to
yeah, this got long. I do want to say.
No, not that it got long. It's just I think our camera's actually running out of battery. So.
We do need to close it up before that. Look at that.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with me today, Aarif. Good work. I love the conversation. I'm excited for playoff hockey right around the corner, as I know you are too. And I feel a lot better about playing the Winnipeg Jets now than I did coming into the show. So I hope everybody agrees.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the Winnipeg game, the Dallas game, Edmonton tonight. It's going to be some fun
Vegas.
games. Vegas.
And plus Bugs Bunny's going to be on that one too. So that's going to be fun. So yeah, I guess any closing thoughts?
No, thanks for having me on. This was fantastic. This is going to be a fun year, man. It's going to be a fun summer. We're going to be doing a lot of traveling.
We've been waiting since October for this time right here. So we're finally here. Yeah. The weather's beautiful. Playoff hockey's around the corner. I can't wait. Can't wait.
So excited.
All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. We will be back probably with Jesse next week because he'll be back home, and we'll be looking towards the playoffs. So thanks for hanging out with us today. For Aarif, I'm JJ. Guerilla Hockey.